Welcome to Warrior Class,
where the teachers whoop ass, and you will too if you pass.
This is episode 6. After a while, we won't be able to count all the episodes.
Right, yeah.
But for now, this is episode 6. This is a very special episode. This is the Prepping with Politics episode. Okay, and it's the episode where we have our very first guest.
Yay.
And he's a very special and valuable guest. And you're about to see. Some of you probably know him. In a minute, all of you will. So let's get to it. Any news right now? I don't have any news myself. What's going on? I don't know if that's good or bad. As far as for Warriors, maybe that's a good thing. You know what I mean? Of course, there's always something crazy going on in this world, but right now, for us in the Warrior class, right now, there's nothing that we have to deal with. Let's hope it stays that way. It'd be beautiful if we never have any crazy news. We only have good news.
Right. That would be great.
To tell, I don't think this world is gonna go that way anytime soon. But let's hope for. We got a couple of Delta strains and Lambda strains and all of that stuff supposedly out. Today we'll deal hopefully with a few things that can, help strengthen you.
Right.
So
and prepping is always a current event. So
always. Prepping is always current. If you're prepping just for a boo-boo hits the fan event, then you're not really prepping. I guess you are, but you have to be more prepared than that. You have to be prepared every day because any day something could happen. Yeah. None of us were prepared for the day in March when we all got hit with, hey, COVID-19.
Right. Go home from work. We're
shutting everything down.
Wear a mask.
I was talking to my 12-year-old. I was like, 2 years ago, when you were 10, you never heard the word COVID-19 or coronavirus. Mm-hmm. Probably never heard. I'm sure she heard the word pandemic because of our training, right?
The actual day-to-day of dealing with an outbreak, so to speak, was not foreseeable, especially for a small child.
But what was good was she said, a lot of stuff we dealt with during the USPI camp.
Right. That's true.
So that was good that she, was able to make that connection. So for her, it was all camp.
Yeah. I've been making that connection myself.
I've been making that connection all my life, but it really came to fruition this time. But what was beautiful is because of our training, we were ahead of the curve with probably everybody else we know. Right. People panicking. We were straight. It was just a phone conversation. We need to do this. And even in our camp, we know, okay, we got to help this person do this. So the last camp we did, it's 3 days, my daughter went through, she had some of her supplies. The sister was like, does she have all of her stuff? So the sisters took her like, we're going to get this, this, this. I said, shoot, go ahead. Can Yanni go walking with us? So she's ready to walk big distances. I said, sure, take her. It was a real good experience for that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it was an overall great experience. I was not able to participate in any of that because that's when I was working I was going crazy. But the camp itself was fantastic and very informative, and that things like that allow you to see the real world application of the things that you've been preparing for. So.
And it was good for me. I got to train myself too. So normally we're in tents inside, yes, and I'll break that down one class why. But during that, I'll tell you now, because private space, the illusion of private space is good for the mind. So that tent at that time is your own home in there. Also, it gets real cold even indoors, and there's no heat and anything like that. So it's good to be able to be in
the ground gets very hard.
Yes.
Also.
So what I did when I was upstairs, I didn't use a tent. Everybody else in the room used a tent because I'm training myself how to do cold weather survival. Right? I've done it before outside. When my wife was 9 months pregnant with me, her and my son Adair in one tent. I have 8 children. Those were the 2 youngest I gave me. They were in the tent in a sleeping bag. I was in the tent, and I had built a stove with a tea light and a can of soup, empty can. I emptied out and cut a hole in that, put the tea light so that light was, that candle in there, you're directing the heat into the tent. So I was fine until it went out. And it was so cold, I immediately woke up.
Oh, wow.
We went out there at about 45 degrees. That probably was the stupidest thing I ever did. I went without a sleeping bag on purpose to test myself. That wasn't the smartest thing to do. But I wanted to see I survived.
Right.
The person with me, and also the person with me who was supposed to be a co-leader of the group, was crying in the tent with his wife. I'm so cold. I won't say the name. I'm so cold. She's probably watching and laughing. It's her ex-husband now. I'm so cold. She had to hold him. I got you, baby. And I'm listening to them. It sounded like a telenovela show or something. And it was terrible. And I said, man, this dude over here is supposed to, he's going to do it too. And he's in the sleeping bag with her now. Right. Yeah, that wasn't the smartest for me to do, but I did know I could survive. He said, well, why'd you do it again? Well, I did it again to see if I could do it in an indoor environment with other people right next to me with tents. Could I mentally deal with not asking, can I go in the tent and all of that, even as cold as it was, right? So we did it because if you remember, when it rained, people didn't even want to go outside in the rain. So we have to be able to deal with adversity.
Right.
But that's a mental training thing. It has to be trained. You can't just say, well, it'll rain, I'll just go out there and hump for 30 miles. You're lying.
And rain is such a realistic, like the least of the situations that you're going to deal with.
Right.
Like,
and it was drizzling.
Rain at any time.
We're running drills on how to move together with firearms and everything as a unit. And people didn't want to put their knees on the ground because what I did was I said, y'all go ahead and wash up, put on new clothes, get cozy. So they had the new clothes on. They didn't want to mess those new clothes up. And I said, well, why aren't y'all kneeling on the ground? You're supposed to kneel right here. Huh? Nobody wanted to kneel. They doing all kinds of stuff, squatting.
That was me.
So I said, now put those knees down. All those clean clothes, you're hearing groans. Because we got to get used to discomfort. You have to train that. You can't just say, well, I'll just be uncomfortable. It's just, no big thing. No. Okay, yeah. Try it. Same way people, when it happens, I've had people, I don't need supplies. I just break into Walmart. Yeah, you and a million other people. Y'all gonna be fighting up in there. So it's all about training. I said earlier, this airs Saturday, but I said this morning, Thursday morning on the Remix Morning Show, that yes, we can't survive without an organization. We need a group of people to survive, really. So if it's just you and your family, you all should, one of the first things you should do after finding a safe place to live, if you don't have one already, a secure place, is to find people. Okay. Hopefully you have people you can trust already, because finding people, they can be anybody. But if those people are not trained and don't have supplies, at best, you're going to be tearing each other apart or tearing apart somebody else taking their stuff. It will lower you to a thief and possibly a murderer.
It'll be a drag on you.
To survive, you're gonna do what you need to do to survive. So have your thing so you can keep yourself and be trained to use the stuff you have. Because God, to have a bug out bag, a 10-day bag. I have a 10-day bug out bag. To have all that stuff and not know how to use anything. You're trying to use it during a disaster.
Yeah.
Woo, boy, that'd be bad. Yeah, now that little car-sized stove, if you don't know how to do it, right? I gave that to a family member who didn't know. They trying to figure it out. You don't have time to do that. You know. All right, so we're going to get to, since we don't have any news, we're going to get to our first segment. Our first segment is going to be a segment led by Ominiki on foods, essential foods that you need to survive and thrive during any disaster, man-made, natural. That includes pandemics, terrible hurricanes and tornadoes, and floods, or whatever it may be.
Situations
right?
You may have to either bug out or bug in for.
And bugging out, of course, means you leave your home and you got to go somewhere else. That can happen under a number of situations. You know, everybody knows about Hurricane Katrina. Everybody had to leave their homes. And those who even tried, some people were able to stay in, but the flooding was such that a lot of people had to leave their homes and try to go other places. You saw people pushing family members in grocery carts and all that water. One of the comrades saw a brother pushing his wife in a cart. He knew them. He's like, oh my God, I know him, right? And she ended up dying. So when you have to bug out, you also have to know how to bug out, where to go. All this has to be planned out before the disaster hits. You say, I'm running over to Joe's house, I think. You got to know where you're going. Okay. So Ominiki's going to deal with the foods, because if you don't have food, you're starving. You can't even function well enough to even do the rest of the things you need to do.
Or food that you can do something with. Because one thing I heard Bob was talking about on the Remix Morning Show about a martial arts student who was very proud that they were able to purchase all this toilet paper at the beginning of the pandemic. And one thing that I remember seeing at the beginning of the pandemic, being at the grocery store, is people buying a lot of frozen food, a lot of, things where I'm like, what if your electricity goes off? Right. What are you going to do? You can't cook anything. More than likely, even with gas, you have to have electricity, even if you have a gas stove, to actually light it. You can't do anything with frozen pizza, during when you're bugging out. I mean, maybe you can for a little while. I guess you can use it as long as the electricity is on, but that's not something that you want to be depending on.
You can use it as a toy for the children, frisbee or something.
Exactly.
Let electricity go. All right, so we're going to get to it. We're going to switch over. Fight cam isn't up. So no, fight cam's not up. So what we're going to do is turn this camera around.
That'll work, sure.
All right. So now the magic of not Hollywood, Atlanta wood. We're going to turn this around and turn it so they can. There, now you can see.
Here you go. First thing I want to say is when I was given this assignment, the first thing that I consulted is the Urban Self-Defense Manual, and that is by our wonderful teacher, Balogun and Ominiki. It's available on Amazon. That's how I got mine. And closer. But there's a lot of really good information in this book. You see how it's been kind of dog-eared. That's how your book should look, because you should really be consulting this for a lot of things. So in chapter 10, I believe, it talks about food. Talks about water too. I'm not really going to touch on water. You should definitely have water. Many gallons of water. But that's something that we're going to talk more about at a later time. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph from here. It says your bug-in bag should contain enough food for a minimum of 3 days. You must store the same amount of food for each person in your family. Foods that require minimum preparation and have a long shelf life, such as canned, powdered, or dehydrated foods and preserves, are most practical. Be sure to include some power bars, dried fruit, and snack foods, not only as portable nutrition, but also as a sweet treat to improve morale. And finally, if you have pets, you should store some pet food as well. So, again, these things that I've included, they actually come from my own bug out bag and also from Bile's bug out bag. So thank you, Bile. And I'm just going to show you a few things that I think are important as far as, and essential as far as having them in your bug out bag. Now, one thing that many people are familiar with are MREs, which is meal ready to eat. This one is a beef stew MRE. These are very important. They last for years. One thing with your bug out bag as far as the food goes is you want to be every 6 months or so going in and checking and making sure that food hasn't expired, that it looks good visually if it's something that you can see. If it doesn't, then you need to replace it so that you can make sure that you're prepared. Again, not rushing around when things actually happen. So this is the beef stew MRE. In addition to that, we also have a vegetarian MRE. So there are vegetarians out there who are concerned with, making sure that you can maintain your diet if you can during an emergency. Then this is something that would be important to you. So this is Italian style pasta with beans. And it is vegetarian. It's not vegan. It has eggs, milk, soy, and wheat. But when I am vegan, I have been vegan for over 11 years. If something happened, I would eat whatever I could until I could get back to veganism, and however long that took. So that's something that we need to be mentally prepared for, is surviving as far as food goes, which I don't think will actually be a big problem with people, because I think most people are going to eat whatever they're able to eat. We talked about the difference between bugging out and bugging in. Bugging out is you having to leave your home. Bugging in is you having to stay in your home for a certain period of time. Obviously, those are going to be two different things as far as being able to carry things such as like canned goods, preserves. Canned goods are good, and they last for a long time. So do preserves, but those things I would say I would only recommend if you're actually bugging in, staying in your house. If you don't have anything else though, then you should take that. And when you have things like cans, you have to make sure that you have a can opener. There is a video on YouTube, and it's a pretty simple explanation. You don't necessarily always have to have a can opener, but if you have a smooth, flat rock that you can rub a can on pretty profusely, eventually you can break the seal on the can and just pull the top off. So if you don't have a can opener, then that's something good that you can use in an emergency situation. So we do canned goods and preserves. Powdered foods like powdered milk, for instance, especially if you have young children or if you just are a person who is really into having milk for some reason. If you think that that's something that will be good for you, then you should definitely have powdered milk on hand. I'm sure a lot of people who grew up with less are very familiar with powdered milk. You can also get powdered coconut milk from places like Trader Joe's and Sprouts, very reasonably priced powdered coconut milk if you feel like that's something that you need. Dehydrated foods, like I don't know if this is necessarily considered dehydrated, but it's definitely something that you can cook with just boiling water. This is instant oatmeal. Another thing, I got this from Seven Onda. Another thing that they have at 790, which I don't have and I don't keep in my bug out bag, but it's good if you want, is there's a powdered soup mix. There's actually several different ones. They have a lentil soup, there's a corn chowder, and they're very good. So those are things that, you know, if you feel like you would want to have soup, and it's just something that you have to pour really hot water into in order for it to cook. So that's all you need is your stove to warm the water, and then you have oatmeal or you have soup. There's a mental aspect, I think, too, of making oatmeal or being able to make something that you're familiar with at home. If you're bugging out, for instance, you can make yourself like, you know, some oatmeal and kind of feel normal for a few minutes, if that makes sense. There's a lot of these, a lot of things to do with bugging out and bugging in. You have to deal with the mental aspect as well. So just think about that as far as the oatmeal goes. Let's see.
So you need a portable stove.
Yeah, you need a portable stove to be able to boil water for this. Or obviously, if you're bugging in and you're at home, you just all you have to do is boil water, and you can do that even if you don't have electricity. There's ways to be able to boil water if you don't have electricity. Protein bars are also important. I have several different kinds. These are vegan protein bars. Obviously, there's way more protein bars out there. Macro bars. This is a Kind bar, which is made mostly of nuts. But there's also a little sugar there, which is good for, you know, if you need a sugar fix. These are protein bites. Again, just making sure that whatever you eat is fairly nutrient dense. Because you don't have, you know, I think food now with a lot of people is kind of a recreational thing. But when something happens, it's not going to be like that. You know, we're not going to be sitting around just trying to get something to eat or having a taste for something. You're going to need to eat something that's going to give you what you need, and then you're going to need to move on to doing something else. This is hazelnut and almond butter, which also is going to have protein in it. You can use it. You can put it on your oatmeal if you wanted to, but this is something that is good to have. Let's see. Dried fruit, I don't have an example of, but dates, for instance, are a really good dried fruit that is a good substitute for candy. So if you have children or if you yourself just have to have candy, then dried fruit, dates, those are good things. And I'll skip ahead actually. Snack foods. Any type of snack foods that you are used to eating that you feel you need, you should have. And so I was about to say I'm going to skip forward, but that the dried fruit, the candy, and the snack foods actually feeds into something that Baba always tells us as far as having your addictions with you when you're bugging out and when you're bugging in. We feel like we're going to be able to, because something is happening, and maybe if there's a flood or something like that, maybe you will be able to snap out of your current reality and just move into this new thing. But for the most part, if you're addicted to sugar, it's going to be very difficult for you to suddenly come off of your sugar addiction, especially in the middle of some event that, you know, you have no control over, more than likely what's happening around you. So if you are addicted to candy, some sort of candy, you should have that in your bug out bag or your bug-in kit. If there's junk food that you feel you cannot live without, you should have some of that in your bug out bag and bug in bag. I have Cbd Dummies, which, you know, can be very helpful for calming. If you have children, if you're trying to calm yourself, these are very good Cbd Dummies. So you want to make sure that you have these if this is something that you need. Something that you feel you need. Okay. Now, I actually would have gone over these with the MREs. This is actually something that I learned when I was doing the camp that Baba was talking to us about earlier, is that these are not technically considered MREs. They're not called that, but they are meals ready to eat. And it's something that you can get from a Kroger or really any grocery store, is these Indian meals. This is chickpeas here. Excuse me, chana masala is chickpeas. Bombay potatoes also has peas in it. So these are pre-prepared that you can, all you have to do is sit them in warm water. They're already cooked. You just sit them in warm water, and or don't sit them in warm water. You can go ahead and eat them as is. Something else that I was able to order, I've actually had these for a year from Thrive Market, is beans. And these are not dry beans. This is pre-prepared beans that are just in these bags. I don't know if you can't see. You can see under the bottom of these to see the food, but you can't see the beans in these. But you know, that's protein. That's something essential that you're going to need. They're also flat. They're not heavy, so you can stick them inside of a bag. And then you have pre-prepared beans with you. And I have black beans, garbanzo beans, and also refried pinto beans. These grains can also go along with the beans. This one in particular is not vegan, but I'm sure that doesn't matter to everyone. But this is like just a rice pilaf. It does not need to be cooked. All you have to do is sit it in warm water, or don't sit it in warm water. Just drink it. I'm sorry, just eat it. Excuse me. This is another blend of grains that you just sit water in. So if there are things, if there is a situation where you just have warm water, then with all of these things, you'll still be able to eat a full meal so that you can continue on with whatever it is that you have to do at that point. One important thing that I wanted to include was culinary herbs that also function as medicinal herbs, because those are very important. If you get out there and say you don't have the proper water and you end up drinking some water and it starts to mess with your stomach, what are you going to do? Make sure that you have some ginger with you. You know, you can use these which these are very inexpensive, so you can replace them easily. So you can either do a bottle, which this is plastic, or this is something else that I ordered from Thrive Market. These are just flat packs of herbs. This is curry. You don't have to have curry with you, but I also have oregano, which is antibacterial. I also have cayenne, which is very important as well. This is cayenne. So there are several medicinal herbs that you can use on the fly that'll really help you while you're out. Excuse me. Excuse me. Another thing that I found last summer when I was looking is this is actually, it's called salsa mix, but it has just several different kinds of culinary herbs in there. And I know that may not be something that seems practical because you're not going to be necessarily sitting over a cooking pot, but think about a situation where you might be actually having to forage, and how much easier it might be to be able to eat something if you actually have something with you that makes it more palatable, if that makes sense. Of course, you want to bring your salt. And I also found these sticks of honey, which can be good in for medicinal purposes, or also, like we talked about, just having something sweet with you. So these are very easy to carry, just sticks. Very, very good for a bug out bag. I think that's everything except for one last thing that I want to include. It's not necessarily a medicinal herb. It is a medicinal herb, but not in this form. This is Cayenne Tincture. Actually, I have a story and I have this. Cayenne Tincture, cayenne pepper is said to be able to restart a beating heart, or a heart that is no longer beating. So I always have cayenne tincture with me. If anything happened to me, I actually had a coworker who I trusted, who I actually talked to about this. Like, hey, you know, if something happens after they stop the CPR or whatever, I'm talking about for me specifically, go and get this from my bag and put some of this in my mouth and see what happens. So, make sure that you have things like this on hand because that's going to come in really handy in an emergency situation. The last thing I'm going to say, and it's also along the line of medicinal herbs, is a story that I have about garlic powder. This happened maybe about 11 years ago. I had a very serious abscess in my tooth. My face was swollen. My jaw was throbbing. I was absolutely miserable. It had been close to 3 days. I didn't have any medical insurance at the time. And, I was on this natural kick. So I was trying to read about what I should try to do. So I kept reading about garlic and how garlic is good. And I know many of us may not deal with garlic and may not use it as far as eating. But the reason why it's important to have with you is that the first couple of days I tried to munch down on a garlic clove and absolutely nothing happened. But when I was desperate and I went back to the garlic and thought, what can I do with this garlic? How can I do something with this garlic? I took a little bit of organic garlic powder, and I'm not saying it has to be organic, but I took a little bit of that and I made a paste with some coconut oil. And I took that and I rubbed it on a cotton ball and I stuck it up into the tooth that was giving me the issue. Within 15 minutes, all the swelling went out of my face. All the pain came out of my tooth. I was able to make it. I actually went to a dentist about 3 days later, but it was as though the abscess didn't happen. Like I was able to make it another 3 days to make it to the dentist because of garlic powder. So, you really have to think about first aid as far as the medicinal herbs go. So it's important to have them with you. The last thing, very last thing, seeds. Seeds are very important nutritionally. Hemp seeds in particular, 3 tablespoons of them is 10 grams of protein. So if protein is a thing that you want to make sure you're paying attention to that you're getting, then hemp seeds are very important. I would take other seeds as well. And also gardening seeds is something that I kind of put in my bug out bag as I just happened to see some seeds, so I went ahead and grabbed them. I think they were like 25 cents or something like that. But when you think about it, if you have to move forward, you may not have access to heirloom seeds or all the best seeds. You may have to use seeds that you actually are consuming or just the cheap seeds that you find. Put that in your bug out bag too, so that if you have to start a garden at some point, you'll be prepared. Thank you, Baba Balogun. I appreciate you allowing me to speak on this. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was great. That was wonderful. Let me adjust this microphone, and we are about to get into our next segment.
Okay. Now it is our pleasure to bring up our guest. Our guest is Dexter Peggins. All right. He's the CEO and lead instructor of Still Standing LLC. He is a U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Army veteran with over 23 years of active service. He served in the U.S. Army as a combat medic, combat casualty care instructor, and class advisor for advanced training of enlisted medical personnel. He's received extensive training in tactical combat casualty care and pre-hospital trauma life support, and is a tactical medical care instructor and certified heart saver, first aid, and basic life support instructor with the American Heart Association. Doc has over 20 years experience in the areas of emergency management, preparedness, and response, and was one of the first members of the CDC's Global Rapid Response Team, which was trained and equipped to respond anywhere in the world to provide support during domestic and international public health emergencies. Doc has worked saving lives and teaching others to save lives all over the world. I've been blessed to be one of his students in his unmatched Stop the Bleed class, which is highly sought. So I was one of the people lucky enough to take the class.
I want to.
And were you at that
No,
class?
I want to.
Oh, yeah. You definitely got to. He's also the author of, now I'd said, Are You Prepared? Because it's a big Are You Prepared on the book. He'll give us an actual title. I keep telling people, Are You Prepared? Right? So he's an author, a comrade, and also the provider of 2 of the first aid kits that I own, right? The only 2 first aid kits I own, that's in my bug out and get home bags, and you should have them in yours too. All right. It's my honor to present to you our very first guest, Dexter Doc Peggins.
All
All right. We're going to bring in Doc.
Welcome.
Welcome. Let me unmute you real quick. Greetings, Doc.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay? Volume okay? Okay,
Yeah.
great. First of all, I just want to say thank you because it's definitely an honor being able to be a part of the discussion this morning. And, I definitely have a whole lot of respect for the family and what you guys have been doing forever in the community. It's just a pleasure overall, period. So you invited me here to talk this morning about the medical aspect. Okay, so if there's anything unique or anything specific, feel free, but I'll just kind of just talk in general as a whole. And I will start off like saying this, I know now we have a lot of folks have are starting to understand the importance of preparedness and being prepared or for those things. I like to use the term those storms. And I also would say storms, they come in different sizes, shapes, and types, be it like what we're going through recently with the COVID pandemic, be it maybe anticipated civil unrest within the country based on different political scenarios or what have you. But the bottom line is being prepared. I think we're starting to focus a lot more on that and understanding the importance of that. One of the aspects I noticed, though, that seems like at times doesn't get a lot of emphasis on until something happens is the medical aspect. And so that's what I want to elaborate a little bit on this morning. I know we have our firearms. We talk about the importance of food, water, all that good stuff. All those are components of preparedness and survival, making you, the individual or the family member, more resilient to be able to survive on your own for extended period of time. One of the things I realized, as you mentioned, that when I was working at CDC, as an emergency response specialist, I was actually involved in part of the Katrina Response, the response to what took place down in New Orleans. And, unfortunately, what happens is even during those responses where you're waiting for some kind of help to arrive, there were areas in which help either arrived real late or it didn't arrive at all, depending on the location. So there was people that went for weeks into months where they saw no help as far as the state, local, or federal response agencies. So basically, they were pretty much out there on their own. So anyway, with that said, in event, be it we have a scenario or emergency event where you're staying at home, bugging in, or you have to leave that safety of your dwelling where you're bugging out, you have to have some type of medical training and be equipped to respond to medical emergencies. Because be it you out there on by yourself during a bug out event, or maybe you're bugging in, sheltering in place, there's going to be a disruption in the normal medical response during different types of emergencies. I.e., we know when something happens medically, some kind of medical emergency, the first thing is to call 911, wait for the ambulance to show up. Okay. If there's some type of disruption where we got civil unrest going all over the country, or maybe in the local area, 911 may not be coming at all. So we have to be trained to be able to provide various types of medical care, either to sustain life while we're waiting for EMS, or basically become our own self-provider, healthcare provider to extended period of time. So with that said, I want to talk about two aspects of that. The basic medical care that you would provide for like your typical cuts, bruises, things of that nature, running a fever, what have you. And then also talk about the kind of medical care that you need to be trained and equipped to provide care for what we call trauma injuries, injuries that result in what we call life-threatening bleeding, where basically you bleed to death if proper care is not administered. So 2 types of kits, and then I'll talk about the training as well. You want to have your basic first aid kit. That's what I call your scratch and bruise kit. In that kit, you should have things like aspirin, Tylenol, hand sanitizer, Band-Aids, eye wash, the stuff to spray in your eyes for those little minor injuries, the non-life-threatening injuries. Neosporin, triple antibiotic ointment, those things is going to kind of help prevent some of the infection. Those things are important because you will get cuts and bruises and scratches. Okay, especially in addition to that, you also want to have things that will be utilized for like a long term, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So the other type of medical kit is what I call the trauma kit. A lot of times we'll call it. You'll hear people use the term IFAC, basically individual first aid kit is basically what that stands for. Individual first aid kit. In the IFAC, you want to have those the medical equipment that's going to be used to treat life-threatening bleeding. For example, life-threatening bleeding is basically the type of bleeding in which you're going to bleed to death in a matter of a few minutes because a major blood vessel, specifically an artery, has been compromised, i.e. nicked, cut, torn, however. For example, in a gunshot, someone gets shot, okay, you'll see the bleeding that might be coming out of that injury site. But what you probably don't see is the damage that was caused to that projectile. So when you have things such as a gunshot or stabbing, it creates what we call a cavity wound. So you'll see, or like a tunnel, we'll say. You'll see the bleeding coming out of the injury site, but what you don't see is the damage to the artery, the bone, the tissue, all that stuff on the inside that you can't see. That is going to continue to bleed. So you can have external bleeding where you actually see the bleeding coming out, or you can actually have internal bleeding where you're bleeding to death, but you don't see a lot of blood coming out. One of the signs and symptoms when we talk about arterial bleeding, life-threatening bleeding, is the person is going to bleed a large amount of blood real quick, okay? And if you're able to see the blood externally when you, we'll say gunshot wound or stabbing, they're probably going to have large pools of blood in and around their body, okay? Initially, if the artery is compromised, you may see blood like spraying or misting out of the injury, providing it's not being covered up by clothing. So if I had some pants on, I wouldn't see that because the clothes is preventing me from seeing the misting or the spraying, okay? But when I touch the clothing or when I look at the clothing, it's going to appear to be really like saturated, wet. If I touch it, I look at my hands are covered with blood. I look at the clothing, it looks like it's just real wet because of the blood that's been spraying into the clothing. Okay. If you're able to see the blood, normally the blood is going to be bright red in color because the blood that's being carried in the arteries as the heart contracts is pushing the blood from the heart through the artery. We'll say the artery is like the interstate highway of the body. It's branching out to different parts of the body, carrying highly enriched oxygen, okay, to the cells in the body. That's why it's bright red in color. Those cells, all those cells need oxygen to survive. If your cells of your body, which makes up organs, which makes up body systems, if they're deprived of oxygen for an extended period of time, those cells start to die. Some cells in the body will regenerate, but other cells, for example, like the brain or whatever, maybe won't. And that's why someone will go without oxygen. They may live, but they have permanent brain damage, okay, because of lack of oxygen. So when we talk about life-threatening bleeding, basically we're talking about an injury in which one of the major arteries has been compromised. And what we have to do is learn how to control that bleeding. And so in your training, we want to make sure that people understand we cannot bring back the blood that person is going to lose, but we want to stop them from continuing to lose blood. Example would be in the upper arm, the brachial artery in the upper arm. If that artery is compromised inside there, by theory, you'll bleed to death within 4 to 6 minutes, okay, if no one controls that bleeding. In the femoral artery in the upper thigh, by theory, you'll bleed to death in 2 to 4 minutes if no one stops the blood. Now, what can decrease that time is what kind of activity the person was doing prior to getting hurt. For example, we're fighting, my heart is already beating fast. Now all of a sudden someone stabs me, okay? When I said 2 to 4 minutes, that time has just got reduced because my heart was already beating fast, so I'm gonna pump that blood out faster. So when we talk about controlling life-threatening bleeding, you cannot replace the blood the person has already lost. Your job is basically, in your training and with your equipment, what you're trying to do is prevent any further blood loss. So let's talk about how we go about that. Anytime we have life-threatening bleeding, like an artery has been compromised in the arm or the leg, we're going to use what we call tourniquets, okay? We learn how to put these on. Basically, it's like a strap that allows us to tighten or torque it down. I'm not going to open it up because you won't be able to see it really. But what I'm holding is what they call a Cat 7 tourniquet. CAT stands for Combat Application Tourniquet. The thing to remember about tourniquets, you only use them on the arms and the legs, nowhere else, okay? Wherever you see the bleeding coming out, you would put this on 2 to 3 inches above that injury site. Wherever you see that blood coming out, you put the tourniquet 2 to 3 inches above that location. And then once you apply the tourniquet, what the tourniquet is doing as you turn what we call the windlass, some people will call it a rod, but the correct term, this right here, is called a windlass. When you turn this, what you're doing, you're creating a band of compression that's squeezing the dermis, the epidermis, the subcutaneous tissue, and muscle, and everything in between, so that you're now able to compress that main artery against that long bone in that extremity. So you're generating that much pressure. So if you're a fat cat, a muscular cat, don't make no difference. A skinny person, you're generating so much pressure that we are now able to compress the artery against the bone. That's how we cut off the bleeding to everything below that point. We occlude the bleeding. That's how we use tourniquets. So we use them on arms and legs only to basically shut off the bleeding from that in that extremity, so we're no longer losing blood, okay? Tourniquets. Now, there's other areas in which are real vascular that we can lose a lot of blood, but we cannot apply a tourniquet to it. Those would be injuries to what we call junctional areas, like the neck and shoulder, the armpit, the groin, junctional meaning where that part of the body comes together with the trunk of the body. So basically the limb coming together to the trunk. So we know, if, like people in knife fighting, because we talk about knives and gunfighting and stuff like that. One of those strikes is going to be hitting that artery. Typically people are going to slash you and hit you a couple times, boom, boom, okay? That tourniquet ain't going to work. Up in here, we have the carotid artery, external, internal. Put that tourniquet around the neck, you just choked him out. He was already dead. If he wasn't already dead, you just killed him, okay? So in a case like that, we do what we call wound packing, where we're going to take a gauze. There is some specific types of gauze, but if we don't have this specific type of gauze, we can use any kind of clean material and we cut it in strips. And we're going to pack it down inside the wound till we get to, like, basically we're trying to get to the source of the bleed. So wherever that artery was nicked, we're trying to pack that stuff down to that point of the injury to the artery, and that's going to start the clotting process. So basically we're trying to pack down to the source, then we're going to put direct pressure in between the combination of what we packed inside the wound with direct pressure. That's what helps to control the bleeding, to slow up the flow. So when I talk about special types of gauze out there, I'm gonna just show you two quick types you'll hear a lot about. This right here is what we call quick clot combat gauze. This is a special gauze that's it has made into the material what they call kaolin. Kaolin is like a powdery substance that's used in the pottery industry. So when this makes contact with the blood, what it's going to do is speed up the body's natural clotting process 5 times. So basically those clots or that scab, just refer to the clot like the scab you would see on the outside. But you're not going to see that scab on the inside. When this makes contact with the blood, that coagulation process is going to be speeded up 5 times. This is called quick clot combat gauze, okay? There's another type of gauze that's used. Once again, this is stuff we use for wound packing. It's called Selox, this right here. This right here, what it does, instead of speeding up the process, when it makes contact with the blood, it's going to form a gel. So it's going to create like a little sticky plastic. Well, it's not plastic, but it's going to create like a sticky gel that basically closes off that bleed. So you got one is speeding up the process, the body's natural clotting process. Selox is going to create a gel that help control the bleed. So when you hear someone talking about hemostatic agent gauze, these are the types of gauze they're talking about. This is stuff that you would have in your medical kit, your individual first aid kit. If you didn't have that, you could just use, like I say, anything clean that you can pack down inside that wound. Because if you're packing dirty stuff inside that wound, it's going to increase the chances of that wound getting infected. So stuff got to be clean. And I want to make a point about that. When you packing this stuff down inside that wound, just know that is extremely painful. Because it's like you sticking your finger inside a person's body and touching nerves. Every time, you hit them, they holler, they scream, and they probably want to fight you, because unless they pass out, don't think they're going to hold still and let you just do this and without some kind of motion. So, but that may save their life. So once again, yes, ma'am.
I have a question about when you put it in the wound, are you just doing it dry? Would you try to put like some alcohol, or if you have that on hand, would you try to put that on the strips, or just put the strips?
You're just packing that strip in, and there's a technique we teach in the class, like the Stop the Bleed class, but there's a technique in how we pack that down inside the wound. So no, you're not putting anything on it at all. So you're packing it down inside the wound. So once again, this is used for, and all these things you should have in your trauma kits, your medical kits, what have you. But this is used for what we call junctional injuries, neck and shoulder, armpits, groin. Now, I just want to point out one thing, especially like in a tactical environment. Those areas that I pointed out, what's something common or unique about those areas that I just mentioned? Looking at it from a tactical perspective, because this is a warrior class. Okay.
The torso.
Okay. Nowadays, when we talk about tactical and people getting ready to have conflict, for the most part, a lot of people are wearing some kind of body armor or vest, right? Okay. When you're looking at that person, those are normally areas that you don't have protection. Here, you bury people to bury, a lot of times there's nothing on the side. And then right below that body armor in the abdominal area, we're getting into the groin. Yeah. So basically, you probably be targeted in one of those scenarios. And those would be the areas of opportunity. If I was trying to take you out, I'm going to be aiming at those areas. So once again, that's for packing. Now, the last thing, one of the last things I want to talk about as far as items that you have in your kit, these are things you should definitely have in your kit in addition to other items. Anytime you have an injury to your chest, okay, this right here is what we call a chest seals. I like to use the term from neck to navel, basically from your Adam's apple to your belly button. We call that the box, the box. So if you hear somebody talk about seal the box, they're talking about that space, front, side, and back. Anytime you have an injury, an open injury, be it a gunshot wound, a stabbing injury, you have to, in that location, you're not going to be packing anything into that injury site. Why would that be? Because that's where your vital organs are at: lung, heart, kidney, spleen. If you start packing something down, we already know we can't put no tourniquet on it, okay? But if you start packing stuff, trying to pack something down in there, you're going to affect the function of that organ if you're able to get to it, if you're able to pack that deep. The lungs, they hold air. They ain't supposed to have no gauze down inside the lung. So any injury to that space, you have to seal it. So basically what we use is like airtight seals. These are manufactured seals. Everywhere you see a hole, you need to put something over that hole. So you may not have chest seals in your go bag or in your kit, but you might have duct tape, okay? You can wipe off the blood, tear off your strip of duct tape, put it over the hole. Okay, duct tapes work well. You might be at home. Wipe off the blood, put you some Vaseline over it, and take some saran wrap, plastic wrap, lay it over the hole. The whole ideal is to prevent external air from coming into that hole. When we breathe, we know air comes in through the mouth and nose. It goes straight into the lungs. But that injury that was created, that open injury to the chest, it's allowing external air to come into that hole, into the space that surrounds the lung. So over a period of time, that air is going to build up. That pressure is going to build up in that we call it the pleural space or the pleural sac, which surrounds the lung. So what happens is that air will build up and it will cause the lung to collapse. When you hear people talk about pneumothorax, okay, that's what they're talking about. That air is going to cause that lung to collapse. As that pressure increases, it will cause what we call tension pneumothorax. So now it's putting pressure on the heart. It's going to affect the function of the heart. So the bottom line is we're not going to be able to get that air out, but we want to keep more air from getting in. So anytime you have any kind of penetrating injury, like from a gunshot wound or stabbing, not only do we check for entrance, but we also check for exit wounds. There's been times where someone might have gotten hurt. The focus was solely on what they saw. They never rolled the person over to check the back, and the person ended up bleeding to death from that exit wound, the blood that they were losing out the back. So the bottom line is we always check for entry and exit wounds. So once again, these are just things that you should have in your kit, tourniquet, okay? I always say 2 is 1, 1 is none. You might get hit in the leg and the arm, okay? You got one tourniquet. Which one are you going to use? A lot of times people will say, especially preppers and people in survival, they say, well, I'm going to make an improvised tourniquet. Well, I would say this. Improvised tourniquet is better than nothing, but in many cases, it's just like nothing because you cannot generate enough force by twisting no belt to create the same kind of pressure this right here is going to create. You know, you see that on TV, and that's where it's at, is on TV. Okay. But there are ways that you can make an effective improvised tourniquet. But I would suggest, you know, listen, audience, don't stake your life on, I'm going to just make me a tourniquet. Spend you about $30, get you the real stuff. North American Rescue is the site I get a lot of my medical stuff from. I'm almost finished, but before I continue on, because I got a couple other things I want to mention. Does anybody have any questions? Because I know I'm just.
I was thinking about the parts that you were saying as far as the tactical gear goes. I've seen a video recently of the Chinese police, and they were wearing like sneakers. They weren't wearing what I would think would be the proper foot gear as far as if you're wearing, you know, all kinds of tactical gear up top and you're wearing sneakers on the bottom. You can't use a tourniquet on your foot, correct?
No, you're not on your foot, but you would put it on a portion of your leg above your foot.
Okay.
So, okay. You do have blood vessels running down into the foot. Okay. So if you had an injury, is your question related to like an injury to the foot? Yes. Before I get all into that.
If you are injured in your foot, what do you do? Because you can't do a tourniquet.
Okay, so no, you're not going to put a tourniquet on the foot, but you would put a tourniquet on the lower leg above the ankle. So you're cutting off blood to anything from that point forward, downward, what they call distal. Okay, so the foot, no, you're not going to put a tourniquet on the foot. Okay, and also make sure, you know, and also this thing. Just because you have an injury to the leg doesn't mean you're always going to have to put a tourniquet on it. It's what we call life-threatening bleeding, arterial bleeding. And the reason for that is because a lot of times just direct pressure or putting a Band-Aid on it, a bandage on it, is not going to control the bleeding. But you can have bleeding from a portion in your leg and arm, what we call venous bleeding. Okay, it's going to bleed. The blood's going to be kind of like darker red in color, because it does not have as much oxygen in it. A lot of times those types of bleeds can be controlled with direct pressure. So you don't necessarily need to apply a tourniquet. But when you see that bright red, a whole lot of blood being lost at one time, big pools of blood, close just saturated, those are indications that that's probably arterial bleeding. And if you don't do something to stop that bleeding within a matter of minutes, that person's probably going to bleed to death. Whenever you're training your folks on tourniquet application, we like in my classes and other classes, we teach them to be able to put this tourniquet on. After they understand the concept of how to apply it, they need to be able to put that tourniquet on in 30 seconds or less. Because the longer time it takes you to put it on, even though you're not dead yet, but your level of consciousness, you're going to lose your fine motor skills, where you can have this tourniquet in your hand and you can't even put it on to save your own life because you're fading to black. Okay. So practice getting it on. Oh yeah. Your level of consciousness is going to decrease. Another thing you want to have them practice, and don't use the tourniquets that you keep in your kit. Those are not the ones you want to practice with or train with. Have some that you use specifically for training. So this is one I might have in my kit, but I also have other ones that I use when I do my training classes. It's tourniquet, just blue in color to represent training. And what I'll do, I might take some like cooking oil and put it on their hands. And the reason for that is because blood is slippery. Blood is slick. Okay. And I tell them, hey, get that tourniquet on 30 seconds or less. You'll find out, because you're dealing with blood. You'll find out something just that simple becomes extremely difficult. I'm grabbing that windlass, trying to turn it, and it's slipping as I'm turning it because of that vegetable oil. The vegetable oil is to give it that substance that feel like slick blood. I can take that vegetable oil and I want to make it more realistic. Have me a bottle of vegetable oil, put some red food coloring in it. Shake it up and use that as part of my training, when I'm training my people. So they get a better understanding of that concept. Blood on the hands, blood on the gloves. This may not be as easy as they make it look. Okay. Can
we get those blue tourniquets from you?
Oh yeah. Everything I have that I'm talking about, you can order from me. Or if you don't want to order from me, of course, you can go to a website, North American Rescue. But of course, I appreciate the support. But yeah, anything I talk about, you can definitely get it from me. Yes. Last thing I want to talk about is because of time, I want to reference this manual right here. Now, I'm not trying to promote this manual or this person because I don't really know him like that. Okay. But this book right here, the Survival Medicine Handbook, the Essential Guide for Medical Help, when help is not on the way. Okay. And B, I'll send you this information. I'll send it to you. Okay. This right here can be a lifesaver when we talk about prepping and survival and stuff like that, because not only does it talks about trauma, but it also talks about herbalistic type remedies and stuff for, diarrhea. You die from dehydration, okay, because you losing fluids and stuff. This is a great book. I mean, especially as it relates to the stuff that we're talking about, okay. It can be found on Amazon. I think it's like about $29 or something, but it's definitely a great investment, definitely a great investment. So I'm going to shut up for a minute. And if you have any questions,
Yeah. So speaking of books, your book, can you give us the title and what your book is about?
Oh, yeah, that's indeed. Okay, here's my little pocket manual right here. Yeah. It's called Disaster Preparedness for Home and Family. Are you prepared? Okay. This is like a little 70-page pocket guide. It's like about like a 5x8, something you can stick in your pocket real quick. And it's just got a lot of little things in there to make people think about. And I have to total respect to my brother. A lot of the stuff that listening to you talk about, and because I got all your manuals, So and matter of fact, even in my book, let me go to this page where I talk about improvised weapons. Let's see here. In this book, I also talk about. All right. And I hope you don't beat me up because I shouted you out in here. But in the book, I also talk about recommending that. Here we go. All right. That cover right there look familiar? Okay, that's in my book.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, that can be found. I probably should tell them to hit you up versus calling Amazon. Yeah, but in this book, I talk about, because I'm talking about like protection and personal defense and stuff like that, and talking about when you don't have weapons, how you can apply improvised weapons. So, I definitely promoting you and shouting you out on that because I know you guys put out some great stuff. Bottom line, a lot of the material that, even though I have experience in emergency management stuff, but a lot of the stuff that you have in your manuals and stuff, a lot of that stuff, those thoughts and processes I got from your manual. So this is just something real small, simple. If anyone is interested, they can go to my website and order it off my website. But it's just got things to make people think, to be prepared, how to safeguard.
Can you give us your website?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Do you need me to type in there or something?
Well, you can say it. I'll be right back. You can say it. I'll be right back.
Okay. So my website is www.cbd stillstandingllc.com. That's STEELStandingllc.com. When you go to my website, you'll see training, but also I have a section that's called store. And on that store, you'll be able to purchase this document right here. Actually, the book is only like $10, but I have additional $3 on there just for shipping and handling. So
Yeah,
I think it's a good
extremely
investment.
reasonable.
Yeah, for $10, it's a lot of good information in this book. I mean, you really won't appreciate it until you actually have it and start looking through it, because we talk about things that you guys talk about as well. You know, what happens if communication goes down, where you're no longer able to communicate via cell phone or internet service? How would you communicate outside your immediate group or outside your family? You couldn't even talk to the person down the street without going down there doing a face-to-face. So we talk about the importance of handheld radios, ham radio capability, just pretty much things that a lot of people probably don't even think about. Uh, I try to address some of those things in the book. Yeah.
Excellent.
I wanted to ask you. I know you recommended North American. What was it called again?
North American Rescue.
North American Rescue. Do you have an affiliate link set up with them?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
So can we get to that through your website then?
Oh yeah, you can. Well, you can get. You won't. I can send it to you. Yeah. I can make that happen. Yeah.
Put it in the chat when.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So you want? Yeah. So
his website.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I can, however you want to go about it, if I can get it for you, you get it from them, But yeah.
We'll get it from you.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so like I was saying, when things don't go crazy, you're gonna probably be your own first responder and also your own healthcare provider for a period of time, be it a short period of time, whatever. I would recommend, as far as training, that everyone gets that CPR AED type training, because we know we have a lot of folks with heart problems and stuff. That heart stop beating on you, that compression only, basically what they teach nowadays, but also the external defibrillator. Basically what that does is you're putting those pads and you have this device where you're trying to shock the heart back to its normal rhythm. So when the heart is defibrillating, it's just quivering. So when we talk about the defibrillator, automated external defibrillator, basically that machine is designed to send a shock, hopefully to shock the heart back into like a steady rhythm. So you can be doing compressions forever, and that person may not come back around, but that's better than nothing. And then the other thing would be stop the bleed, where you're learning how to control life-threatening bleeding, how to stop that blood loss. So those two classes, when you're incorporating into your training, definitely CPR AED and some type of stop the bleed training.
How often are you available for those trainings?
So right now, what I'm doing is I do it by request. So in Atlanta, I kind of like teach over there more so like on a regular basis at I don't know if you're familiar with Stoddard's indoor range, shooting range over there by Atlantic Station. So I kind of teach over there quite frequently because of my relationship with them. But also like when it comes to like gun clubs, community activist groups, organizations, what have you, a lot of times they'll just reach out to me and say, hey, doc, we got 12 people we want to get together and want to see if you can provide training. So we'll set it up and make it happen.
Now, we plan to start a warrior class tour really around the U.S. where viewers for our show, different comrades are. We'd love to have you a part of that if you're available. Where it will be self-defense, it would be food prepping, you would have the medical aspects, things like that. So that's a thing that we want to try to do next year.
Oh yeah, that'd be an honor. Yeah, I would look forward to that. Actually, I'm doing stuff like that right now, kind of like on my own. I've been up to Detroit, Baltimore, getting ready to go to Philly.
Great
Yeah,
minds think alike.
yeah, so it's a lot of folks, that's, part of the community kind of doing similar things. But yeah, I don't have any problem traveling, and I mean, not so much just traveling, but just reaching out to other communities. Yeah, I just know this stuff we need, so yeah.
Absolutely. So it was great having you with us, Doc.
Yes, absolutely.
I knew when we have our first guest, you'd be the one.
And you set the bar high, very high.
All right.
Yeah.
I see you see, I already got a big head now. I need to lose some weight there, big. So you just made it bigger,
And we want to have you back on here soon. There's so much to the first aid medical part.
Oh yeah.
That most of us are lacking.
Oh yeah.
That it'll be great to have you on. Where can we contact you? What's your email? Not your email, your website and everything, so we can contact you for classes and everything like that.
Okay, so my email address is still standing 7. That's STEELSTANDING, the number 7 at gmail.com. That's okay. My web link is www.stillstandingllc.com. Okay. And for those of you on Instagram and you want to see some of the stuff we're doing out there on Instagram, it's still STEEL.standing, STANDING, still.standing on Instagram. And you'll see Doc, so you'll know it's me.
Yeah. Wonderful, Doc. This was great. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Appreciate you.
We look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. I appreciate you. It was an honor.
I appreciate you. It was an honor having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
That was great.
It was.
Yeah, what a great first guest.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, like you said, we set the bar high on that one. The next person we bring in gonna have to be, I don't know, the creator, him herself, or I don't know what we're gonna, if you have suggestions for us, classmates, suggest who we'll have on here next and tell us what you'd like to hear about. I got some ideas, but let us know who you like to know about. I'd like to bring in people that are great that everybody should know, but everybody may not know.
Right. Yeah.
Right. The next person I'm thinking of bringing on is a sister who is one of the greatest self-defense experts I've ever met in my life. Friend of mine, been training a long time, and as much as people say, y'all may say, I work y'all, she works her students like,
That's good. I mean, she loves them.
Right. I mean, she loves them. Exactly. And so that's the person I'm thinking of, and I'll reveal who they are once we get them on. If we can get them on, she's pretty busy, a professor and all kinds of other things.
Wow.
So, but I think we can get her, thinking of her, some other folks, one person we were thinking of, she got so big now, she's making big movies and
all this, so we may not get her. Our people have to talk to her people.
Yeah.
You know, our people have to talk to her people, but we may be able to get her too.
I don't have any people, so.
Oh, you got somebody. You got some people. You know, you may pull out, you know, King Vegan or somebody we ain't seen.
Okay.
You know, or the big Kemetic yoga guru or somebody. So you got some folks now. You know, don't say you can't get them. We'll see. Anything to give to you all that'll help us all become better warriors, better preppers, and be able to survive this mad world and what it has to come, for us. So that is this episode 6, prepping with politics, Black Power prepping. It's been a pleasure being here. It's been a pleasure being here with my host, Ominiki. I'm Balogun.
Likewise. I'm Ominiki.
And thank you. This is Warrior Class number 6. Peace and blessings. Love y'all.
Thank you. Peace.